In today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, we're reviewing Isaiah Stewart's season. I'm going to tell you guys why Isaiah Stewart had the best season of his career this year. We'll talk about it today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And make sure you guys are checking out the description down below for the Substack, where I got reviews, film breakdowns, all that kind of stuff coming to you guys. Some of the best coverage you guys will find for your Detroit Pistons in written and film content. Also, head over to the playback room in the description down below as well. Subscribe. You can join us for some playoff game watches and also heading into next season for the future Piston game watches as well. We'll also do probably like NBA draft night, stuff like that. So check out the description for all of that. But in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Isaiah Stewart. We're going to be reviewing his season this past year, and we're going to start with the positives, and then we'll go into the negatives, and we'll give a review and our overall thoughts on how he played this year and our thoughts on him moving forward, just like we did with Jay and Ivy in the last episode. And we started with Stu and Ivy for these season reviews because neither of them really got a playoff review because obviously Ivy didn't play and Stu only played one game, so it didn't feel right to give him a playoff review. So we start with those two guys with this. We'll get through everyone on the roster, obviously. But I want to start off by saying this about Isaiah Stewart. I think this was very clearly my very first takeaway, my very first point I want to make about Isaiah Stewart's season is I believe this was by far, in a way, his best season in the NBA. Now, if you look at the raw box score numbers, you won't think that. He only averaged 6 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, 1.7 assists. He didn't have no crazy box score numbers, but I think this was by far and away his best season in the NBA. I'm going to tell you guys why. First reason, one of Stu's biggest weaknesses heading into this year was his inability to be a quality finisher at his size. If you can go back a few years, when the Pistons were initially trying to get him to become a power forward, to be a four, a lot of that, now some of it was because they believed in his three-point shooting, yes, but a lot of that stemmed from the fact that he wasn't a good enough finisher as a five-man and wasn't thriving enough as a pick-and-roll guy, so they thought, okay, we got to move him away from the basket a little bit because he's not providing enough value at the basket as a pick-and-roll man, as a finisher at the rim. Also, his hands weren't the greatest early in his career, so that was an area that he really struggled with at the beginning of his career. Heading even into this season, he wasn't a great finisher. And then this year, he had the best season, or the best finishing season of his career. Last year, he was in the 26th percentile as a finisher. The year before that, a 7th percentile. Year before that, 8th percentile. Like, he was a really bad finisher. This year, he jumped all the way up to the 50th percentile as a finisher. Now, is he a great finisher? No, but he's much improved. He worked hard to get that improved, and he is much improved to where this is actually, you can take this. He's around average, a little bit above average. Just around there. As a finisher, you will take that. Around 70%, close to 70% at the rim, according to Clean the Glass. That is huge. As a big man, I thought his hands were way better this year as well. Like, I thought in previous years, like we mentioned earlier, he would fumble a ton of passes on the roll to the rim. This year, I thought his hands were way better. I honestly can't think. I wrote about this midway through the season over on the Substack, when I talked about Isaiah Stewart's more than just a fighter after that whole stuff went down with him in the middle of the year. I spoke about how I couldn't really think of one time where Stu was really fumbling the ball. That in past years, I could think of multiple moments. This year, I really can't think of many. His hands were much better, and his finishing around the rim was way better than it ever has been throughout his career. So I think that is reason number one. Because while he didn't average a lot of points, he also saw a heavy decrease in minutes. So I feel like if you extended that to what normal minutes would look like, his efficiency obviously was way better this year because of that. But he would have averaged a lot more points, obviously, if he played more minutes because of his efficiency around the basket, vastly improving. The other area of his game that we obviously have to discuss is defensively, this might have been his best year in the NBA as well. Again, limited minutes, didn't play 30-plus this year. But in his limited minutes, this might have been the best defensive season of his career. Over on cleaning the glass, he had a career-high block percentage this year, 3.5%. That was in the 90th percentile this year. He was one of the very best rim protectors in the entire NBA this year. I thought he was a lot more aggressive on the glass as well as a defensive rebounder this year. And he really was the Pistons. He really set the tone defensively for the Detroit Pistons as a backup five. Not as the starting five. He set the tone as a backup five that only played 20 minutes a game. I fully believe. I know people like to talk about Jane Ivey and if this guy shot better and if that guy shot. I believe fully that if Isaiah Stewart was healthy, the Pistons could have beat the Knicks. If they simply had Stu in this series, I think that could have changed so many things for the Pistons in this series. Truly do. I think Stu was really, really impressive this year. And this is coming from somebody, you guys know this. And by the way, just to support his defensive impact, this year when he was on the floor, the defensive rating for the Detroit Pistons was 108.6. When he was off the floor, it was 112. I just lost it. 112.7. The defense was 4.1 points better with him on the floor. He set the tone for them defensively. He was fantastic. And he bought into a limited role. The Pistons weren't asking him to try to, be off the dribble guy, attack closeouts like they were in past years. They weren't asking him to be a stretch big like they were in past years. They made it very clear what his role was. It was to be a physical presence in the paint on both the offensive and defensive end of the floor, set hard screens, where I think he still needs to get better as a screener, but I thought he was better this year as a screener. I still think he needs to get better in that regard, though. He bought into his role and thrived in that role. And I think the biggest thing for Stu and what led to him having such a fantastic season this year for the Detroit Pistons. Also, just to give some other numbers that were career best for him before we get into that. Career high true shooting percentage, 61.6%. This year in just 19 minutes a game, he averaged 1.4 blocks a game. That's a career high. This is a guy who played 31 minutes last year, 28 minutes the year before that, 25 the year before that. In 19 minutes a game, had the career high blocks per game. If he would have played 30 minutes a game, he probably would have averaged 2.3 blocks a game, somewhere around there. So those were all career highs. But like I was saying, what I think really led to Stu having this incredible value for the Detroit Pistons this year, and what led to people like myself who maybe weren't the highest on Stu now coming around and being so high on Stu, is the fact that they finally put him in. You finally found the role in which he thrives and that you get the absolute most value out of him, and that is as a backup five. He is not a starting four. He is not an any four. He's not a good enough player on ball, and that's fine. He doesn't need to be. That's not a knock on him. That's just not the type of player he is. What he is an incredible defender with incredible energy that can change the momentum within a game because of his physicality. He is an enforcer, and when he's playing, he's kind of like those players, I would say. It's not as extreme as this, but there is something to this. He's kind of like one of those players that if he plays around 20 to 25 minutes, you're getting the max out of him. You're getting that max value. And the longer he plays, that value starts to drop and drop and drop and drop. You'll see coaches talk about how some guys, really, you get the most value out of them if you play them in lesser minutes, because you can get the most effort, the most stamina, the most, randomness out of them within those short minutes. But once you start to extend them even more and more, that randomness goes away. The energy starts to drop off. You can start to pick at his weaknesses a little bit, and it starts to get exposed a little bit. I think that is somewhat of the case with Stu as well. He was so valuable and so much better this year because of his improvement as a finisher himself. Give him a ton of credit for that. But also the Pistons found the right role for him as a backup five. He played limited minutes. and thrived in that. And that's where he should be best used. He's probably, I think there is an argument for Stu to be the best backup 5 in the NBA. And that is incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. So much so to where I think he would have been a better matchup here against the Knicks than even Jalen Duren was. So I truly believe that they had Stu throughout the Knicks series. They had a chance. But this year for Stu, I thought was absolutely fantastic. He bought into his role. He improved as a finisher. He improved as a defender somehow. Had his best year as a defender in limited minutes. And that contract that he signed a few years ago is turning into a steal because he is arguably the best backup big. He's definitely, I think, the best backup defensive big in the entire NBA. And he's young. He's on a good contract. He loves it. Loves being in Detroit. All that kind of stuff. I think this was an absolute fantastic season for Isaiah Stewart, and he's found his role in this team. And I think there's a heavy chance that he's it's hard to predict these things because in the same breath, he probably is like the most tradable one because he's on such a crazy good contract, so his value is probably through the roof. But also in the same breath, you probably say he's a guy that you could see playing 10-plus years in Detroit because he embodies Detroit. So I was nothing short of incredibly impressed by Isaiah Stewart and how he played this season for the Detroit Pistons. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill how you guys felt about Isaiah Stewart this season. Did you come away impressed with him this year? Do you like the role that he's in now? Were there some other things that you were impressed about that I didn't bring up? Again, comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. Now coming up, I'll talk about a few of the weaknesses in his game, including one big weakness that is a bit of a concern for me moving forward. I'll tell you guys what that is coming back. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more, use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply with DoorDash. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, that's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below for the Substack and the playback. You guys can check all that out down below. And now I want to get into Stu's weaknesses and the biggest weakness within his game that I'm not going to lie to you guys, pretty concerned about. And honestly, I should say that differently. It's not a problem within his actual game. This is now 3 straight years where Stu's season ends with injury. That's pretty concerning to me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. The way in which Stu plays, it's not like an explosive athlete, but it's incredibly physical. And he is constantly challenging every shot at the rim. He's going after everything. With that play style, the fact that we're now 3 years straight, and actually, is it 4 years straight? It might be 4. If I remember correctly, it might be 4 years as well. I know for sure it's 3 straight years. I won't say 4 because I'm not 100% sure if his second year also ended due to injury. But I know for a fact it's been 3 straight years now of him ending his season with injuries. His second season he didn't end with an injury. But yeah, definitely 3 years in a row. And that's concerning to me. Last year he played 46 games. Year before that he played 50. This year he did play 72, but it ended again in the playoffs, game 1. So that right there is, I think, Pistons fans and the Pistons front office probably biggest concern with Stu is that, okay, can this guy make it through a season, start to finish, without getting hurt. Now, is that a big enough weakness to where you're like, okay, I have to move him? No, no. It's just a concern of, man, will we ever be able to have him will we ever be able to have him for an entire season? Like, should we be ready? Should we have a third big in the playoffs that can be impactful because we are anticipating that he may not be able to make it through an end of the season? That's my biggest concern with Stu because of how physical he plays and because a lot of these injuries, I mean, 2 of them at the very least, I remember he got from chasing a shot at the rim and just getting undercut, getting slammed into, landing wrong. Because he chases everything at the rim and because of how physical he is, he ends up in these positions that get himself hurt. Whether it's sprained ankles, sprained knees, stuff like that, it ends up hurting him. So, and if he was healthy, if he's able to be healthy from start to finish, and at least be healthy, I should say, at the end of the year, I think that could have changed this past season for the Pistons. I think it will change seasons in the future for the Detroit Pistons. So that's my biggest concern with Stu. There is actually another positive I wanted to bring up. I forgot to bring this up earlier on. Career best from the free throw line, and also career best on all 2-pointers. So wanted to bring that up for Stu. Stu was much more efficient this year, career best efficiency season. I was really impressed, but I didn't bring that up, so I wanted to make sure. I forgot to bring that one up earlier. The other, it's not a weakness, but it is like a, I don't want to say con because what would be the right word? I mean, it's going to go down under the weaknesses because we're going to talk about how it could help and how it hurts the team somewhat. But okay, let's just get into it. His 3-point shooting. The Pistons spent 2 years really diving into his development as a 3-point shooter. Dove really heavy into developing him as a stretch big. And 1 year in, he was around 32% on 4 attempts a game. And it was like, okay, that's not great, but first year ever shooting on this type of volume, we'll see if he gets better. And then the next year, he shoots 38% on around the same type of volume. And you're walking out like, okay, the development was worth it. You spent 2 years trying to develop him as a 3-point shooter, as a stretch 5. It's working. He's here. 38% on 3.8 attempts is nothing to sneeze at. You will take that. Doesn't need to be Cat, doesn't need to be Dirk or anything like that. But that is incredibly valuable to have an incredibly impactful defensive big that can also shoot threes. So that's where I think a lot of people were coming into the season expecting to be at. And then this year, he went from averaging 3.9 3-point attempts over the previous 2 years. This year, he shot 0.7 threes a game. Now, again, he did have his most efficient season of his career. He improved as a finisher. We spoke about that earlier. But I feel like it does put a damper a little bit on his value and a little bit of a damper on his career progression or the time spent on his development, that you spent this time trying to develop this part of his game. And then once it seemed like he finally got to this part of his game, either one or two things had to have happened. These are the only 2 options. Either one, he lost confidence in the shot completely and just didn't want to take them anymore. I don't think that's what it was. Or the other option is the coaching staff told him, we don't want you shooting threes, just go to the basket. That's what I think it was. And on one hand, you can say it worked because he became a much better finisher this year, had his most efficient season. And I was just telling you guys, I think he had his best season of his career. So on one hand, I guess you could say, I mean, it didn't hurt him. But on the other hand, I would argue it didn't help him either. Like, his improved finishing, great to see. Love it. I don't see how shooting a few threes a game means he doesn't remain a better finisher. I don't see how I don't see the correlation there. Also, with him being that level of a 3-point shooter, that spaces out the floor, creates more space, and something we spoke about, which is I think probably the most frustrating part with me about this, is that in 2023, when everyone was talking about, and I was the Stu quote unquote hater, When everyone was talking about, well, Stu's hitting these threes, teams are going to respect him. In 2023, my biggest argument, and I believe it was proven to be correct, is that whether Stu hits threes or not, he does not have a reputation as a three-point shooter, and teams are not going to guard him as a three-point shooter until he proves it over a longer sample size that he can hit them relatively well, and then teams are like, okay, we have to close out on this. And I feel like after 2 years and after a full season of him shooting at 38%, if he would have came out shooting this year the same type of attempts and shooting that same type of percentage, you finally would have actually started to see, that come to fruition. You would finally start to see, okay, it's been 2 years. Now he's shooting this volume. Now he's shooting this percentages. Teams are catching on, and now he's getting respect. And now he actually is spacing the floor. But instead, they completely went away from it. Now, again, you can make an argument for why they didn't do this. I mean, he only took 4.4 shots a game. The previous years, he was taking 8.3 and 8.8. So he saw his free goal attempts drop a ton. He wasn't really a focus within the offense. So I guess you could make the argument that everything across the board when it comes to his usage offensively just dropped. So therefore, obviously, his three-point volume would drop. Which, sure, but he was never popping this season. I never saw him. I don't feel like I saw him pop more than 5 times within a game or throughout the season. Like, I really feel like it never happened. Especially because coming into the year, part of the thinking was, okay, well, you can play Stu with Ron and Asar because Stu will be spacing out and he'll pull the big out of the paint, and therefore you can play those non-shooters with him. Now, he was kind of operating the exact same spaces, and even throughout the season, you saw them, especially Asar and Stu, kind of be in the same spots and not really know how to fit on the court together. So that's just one disappointing part of his season. Again, I think he had the best season of his career this year, but that is pretty disappointing to me that you wasted. It feels like you wasted 2 years of development with this three-point shooting. Once he finally got there, you just abandoned it, and it was like, okay, we don't need that. And I don't know why you wouldn't want that, because having a 5 that can shoot and space the floor out, that also is an incredible defender. Like that's insanely valuable. That's crazy value. So I'm not really sure why they just discouraged him from ever shooting him now. But I'm hoping that he ends up shooting him again at some point. That's not a part of your game that if you have it, it should not be left unused. Now, it's different if you're not a shooter, you can't shoot, and they're forcing this development onto you. Okay, yeah, it's a waste of time. Don't need to force it. But if you actually can shoot from beyond there, that's value that should be unlocked. That shouldn't be just left unused. So that's the other part of his game that I was pretty disappointed about this year. But outside of that, I really don't have any negatives with his season outside the injury stuff and the lack of three-point shooting. So I was really impressed with Stu this year, to be honest. Like I really, really impressed with Stu. So let me know in the comment section down below. Oh, I guess another negative. I just thought of it. I should have brought this up. Another negative. He does need to control his temper at times on the court. Like, everyone loves his physicality, loves his attitude, loves his enforcement mentality. But there have been definitely times when he lets that go too far, crosses the line, and ends up hurting the team. There's multiple occasions where that happens. He needs to toe the line and needs to temper it down at times. That's the only other thing I'd say. But outside of that, Stu's good in my book. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KookaHill. Do you guys have any negatives about Stu's game that I did not bring up? Anything you guys would like to see him improve upon? Things you guys didn't like seeing from him this year that I didn't bring up? Let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at KookaHill. When we come back, I want to talk about what Stu's future is on this team after this season, how I feel about him moving forward. We'll talk about that coming up. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below. And for those of you guys who are still listening, also comment down below or reach out to me, DMs, or however. Let me know some ways that you would like to see the podcast improve, some things you guys would like to see added to the podcast this summer during the offseason moving forward that you guys think would make the podcast even more fun to listen to. And whether it be guests, content, whatever it is, just let me know if you guys have any ideas or things you guys would like to see on the podcast to make it a better listen for you guys. I'm always trying to develop and evolve the podcast. I think we've gotten it to a great spot, but we can always be better. So let me know if there's anything you guys would like to see done differently or extra things done that would make it an even better listen for you guys. But let's talk about what I believe Stu's impact on this team is moving forward. So, like, I mentioned it earlier. It's a difficult, and not difficult. It's kind of, there's two answers here. And it's like, because of how good Stu is, and because of how valuable he is, and because of how great the contract is for the value that he's bringing, theoretically, he probably is the most tradable guy on your roster. He probably is the most valued guy in a vacuum on your roster. Because of the contract, because of his value and ability to be an impact player in the playoffs, we know those type of players are incredibly impactful in the playoffs. So on one hand, you can say, well, you could see him traded soon. But I don't think you'll see Stu get traded. I think Stu will probably be a 10-year plus Detroit Piston. That's my guess. Unless Stu asks out, something like that happened, I'm going to assume it probably will be the other. I think he probably ends up playing a very long time in Detroit. And I think he will be a part of a lot of playoff wins in Detroit. Doesn't mean I think he's untouchable. Doesn't mean I think that if a good offer came around, look, Marcus Smart was the heart and soul of that Boston Celtics team. But when a good deal came around that made them a championship team, it helped them get over the hump, they had to do it. So if something like that happened with Stu, then obviously you have to do it. But I really do look at Stu the same way the Celtics look at Marcus Smart, where unless it's a move that's literally taking you over the top, it has to be done. He is the heart and soul of your team, and he should be a long-term player for this team, and he should really go down as one of those type. Like, he's not going to be, a legend for the team, but I definitely could see Stu going down as like a Tony Allen, like those Tony Allen, Marcus Smart guys, when no one thinks that they actually were like a top 10 player in your team's history, but they were so important, such a likable figure, stood for so much and impacted the game emotionally, all that kind of stuff, to where they are beloved by the fan base for years. I could see that being Stu moving forward. I think Stu is going to be one of their most impactful playoffs or impactful players when they reach the playoffs next year. And for their playoff runs, I think they are desperately going to need him to be healthy at the end of the season. Because if Duren is their center of the future, if that's where they're going, I can see many situations where Isaiah Stewart is the better matchup within the series, and you're seeing talking heads. You're seeing people like me who cover the team. You're seeing national media talking about how this is going to be an Isaiah Stewart series. They need Isaiah Stewart here. They're going to maybe they should swap starters. And that's not to say Duren isn't good. That's just to show you how valuable Stu is. I could really see Stu filling in that Al Horford type of role with that he's filled with the Boston Celtics. I could see Stu filling that for the Detroit Pistons as they become contenders within the Eastern Conference. I've really done a complete 180 on Isaiah Stewart. Everyone knows, if you listen to the podcast long enough, I was not the highest on Stu. I wasn't just low, but I wasn't the highest on him. That's very fair to say. I've done a complete 180. He's completely won me over with his play this past year. I 100% see how viable he was. There is a good argument to be had that he was the best center on this team until mid-January, when Duren really started to turn it around. And some may even argue on a per-minute basis he still was best. That's how good he was this year. So Stu completely won me over this year. I love him on this team. I think he's great, and I think he's going to be heavily impactful for years to come for this Detroit Pistons team. What's an old, one of those guys on, the Bad Boys teams that weren't, the best players, but everyone, like Rick Mahorn, I guess. Is that, a good comparison? Too young to watch Rick Mahorn, but I know he's, a legend. People still talk. He was never, the best player or a Hall of Famer kind of stuff, but he's still around. People love him. Is that, the comparison there for Stu? Some of my older listeners, let me know. Is that accurate or not? But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill, how you guys feel about Isaiah Stewart moving forward. And until next time, we'll get into the next player review. Who do you guys want to have season reviewed next? Cade, Asar, Duren, Tobias, Malik, THA. Who is it? Let me know, comment section down below. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Thank you guys for being everyday listeners. But again, until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody.